Hi, and welcome to another episode of Newsmakers Journal of the Vaccine Year. It is Friday, September 13th, and we are joined on our journalism panel by some of Santa Barbara's top local journalists, Ryan Cruz of The Independent, Jade Martinez-Pogue of Newshawk, and Josh Molina, international man of mystery and noted multi-platform journalist who got in a lot of trouble this week, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. All right, Jade, leading off, kind of more bad, not a very good news week on the COVID beat. Can you sum it up?
Yeah, so ever since like late to mid-June, cases have just been rising and rising and rising. This week, we've seen some of the highest number of daily new cases and active cases that we've seen since beginning of February, which is right as the winter surge was kind of starting to die down a little bit. And so a lot of it has to do with the new Delta variant. It's far more contagious, and public health officials are saying that like an infected person carries more of the virus in them, which makes them more infectious to other people. So
about what percent of the cases are being seen are of vaccinated versus unvaccinated people?
So for the latest data that public health has given, so for the week that ended last Friday, is about 77% were unvaccinated and 23% were vaccinated. So it's still, I think Dr. Anzorg said 1 in 7 new cases are among vaccinated people, which isn't super high, but still concerning.
And why is explain again, just briefly, why the Delta variant is so much more dangerous, I guess, or so much more prevalent?
Yeah, so the Delta variant can infect about 7 people. An infected person can spread that to about 7 others, whereas the original virus or some of the other variants would only spread it to 2 or 3 other people. So it just has the ability to go a lot further than the other ones. And because it carries the higher viral load, people get sicker quicker and they can just spread it faster.
Right. So the R naught number,
Yeah.
as I like to call it, is higher on the Delta variant. All right. Hey, Ryan, so you did a piece this week trying to, I guess, dispel some of the myths, of which there are many, about vaccines and so on. Can you talk about the breakthrough vaccine or the breakthrough cases of COVID where people who are vaccinated are getting it? Why is that happening? And is it supposed to? And what's the whole situation with that?
Yeah, of course. So like Jade was saying, there's a percentage of people that are vaccinated that are still getting sick of COVID, and that's the breakthrough cases. And in Santa Barbara, the number seems a little bit higher than the nationwide average, but a lot of what I was learning this week and doing my background research, and there's a lot of information coming out and to go through, like you said, a lot of information on both sides and different types of studies, but it's found that this breakthrough cases are nationwide. It's a very small percentage, and in Santa Barbara, we don't have that many cases. So it ends up being the couple cases that are vaccinated people. It represents a little bit of a larger percentage. I think last week it was 89-11%, and then this week it's about 77-23. So like she says, it carries a larger viral load and infects more people. But what we're seeing is these breakthrough cases. If you're vaccinated, they're not ending up in the hospital. They're not ending up dead, which is why people are still pushing the vaccine. So like you said, I've been going to a lot of council meetings and board of trustees meetings, and there's a lot of public commenters that are saying people are still getting sick, and they like to hang their hat on there's a number that 36,000 people were sick in a week, vaccinated people. And when you take that out of 194 million that have the vaccine, that represents less than 1% and about 100% in some of the situations. So it's really important. What I learned this week is to put these numbers into context and understand that yes, people that are vaccinated are getting sick, but they're not getting as sick and they're not dying and they're not going to the hospital.
All right. And then we had the governor whose recall election is fast approaching, deciding this week that he would, I guess, follow the leadership of the Santa Barbara Unified School District and require all school students to wear masks. Josh, but Santa Barbara's doing something else weird, which is they're requiring 12,500 nasal swabs. So every kid in school has to test with a nasal swab on. It's not the first day of school, by the way. I talked to the superintendent today, but why are they doing that?
Jerry, is that a Larry Elder book on your bookshelf there? Are you getting ready for the Gavin Newsom recall? I know how much you like the governor.
The Larry Elder era begins, yeah, for one year, and then they have another election, and then he's gone. Yeah. Anyway, what about the nasal swabs?
Yeah, so the Santa Barbara Unified School District is going to test 12,500, basically, all their students, K through 12, for COVID. And one of the reasons that they're doing this is because they want to be able to know who has it and they can react to it and stop any sort of potential spread. So at Tuesday, they showed a video. They showed, it was a 6-year-old, how a 6-year-old would actually use a swab. And, they demonstrated it. They're sticking it 1 inch into the nostril, twirling it around for 15 seconds to get a sample. And the idea is that, they're trying to demystify it and say, this is something that we're going to do. No, it's not going to be all on day one. Obviously, they're going to have to spread it out and stagger it, but they want to get a baseline from there. And then I think from there, they'll decide how they're going to proceed. It's controversial, as Ryan was saying, the Santa Barbara Unified School District meeting. There were a number of parents, I think there were 21 people who called in, and not all of them said the same thing, but the general point was, we believe COVID is real. However, we are against mandatory vaccinations for staff, and we also definitely don't want the kids to be tested. And so there was some banging, there was some loud noise. It was a little bit of a scene. I believe the police department was called. There was a break. Board President Kate Ford called a pause to the meeting, and they went to their offices. Then they came back 10-15 minutes later. So there's a lot of anti-government sentiment. Obviously, we've seen this with we've always seen it to some degree. Trump era, it was magnified, obviously, in COVID. And so we're seeing this, we don't trust the government, and we don't trust them to be able to tell us what to do with our, with COVID and vaccines. Now, by contrast, Goleta Unified, they're not going to do that. And if we're talking about the number of kids, Goleta Unified, K through 6, TK through 6, and then Santa Barbara is just slightly larger, a couple hundred. So we're talking about this pretty much the same size. And Goleta is saying, hey, we're putting all of our focus on protocols that prevent the spread. We're masked indoors. We have small classrooms. We're going to have groups that we break up into. 90% of our teachers are already vaccinated. 80% of the overall employees are vaccinated. So they're not requiring testing. And I have to say that is an approach that seems to be a good compromise in terms of, they're little kids. And I think it was Shole Jahangir, board member, she said, these are children, and they have feelings, and this could be traumatic. And we want to take an approach that is not going to be one that's going to traumatize them. And also, if some of these parents can't even agree on the vaccine, obviously, when you're talking about testing kids, that's going to be a fight, and that's going to be a distraction. So
Yeah.
Toledo Unified saying, we're going to stop the spread with masks and other protocols. We're not going to require mandatory testing for these 6-year-olds.
Well, we'll see. Yeah, Jade, you did a piece interviewing a lot of parents and their expectations and concerns and mostly anxieties about the year. Would you say that of the people you talked to, their biggest concern was that the schools wouldn't stay open, or what was the takeaway?
Yeah, a lot of them had that concern. It definitely was not hard to get the parents talking about the schools. But I think a lot of them, even despite if they were upset with the mask mandate, or they wanted the mask mandate, or they wanted a vaccine mandate, a lot of them had this like general feeling that, in-person learning is the best for our kids. It's what they need. They're at such a young developmental age, and they were excited about, the sense of normalcy, a schedule, a routine, especially for the younger kids. I had a bunch of parents tell me that, all the switching back and forth between distance to hybrid, all of that just really put a disruption in the kids' schedule, and it made them not want to go to school. And so I think a lot of them are just really scared right now. They're optimistic about the return to in-person, but they're just scared it's going to go back to hybrid or back to distance learning. And a lot of them have said that the district hasn't communicated a plan to them, and they don't really know what's going to happen if things get worse.
Yeah, for what it's worth, the superintendent, Hilda Maldonado, told me today, she said, we are 150% committed to keeping the schools open, which is an interesting promise. There's all these dystopian scenarios that occur. I mean, little kids are the most vulnerable to this thing because obviously they're not vaccinated. But meanwhile, Ryan, over at City College, we've had 22 votes on whether to have mandatory vaccinations or not, and the latest is what?
The latest, we have a vaccination mandate that got approved August 5th at the Board of Trustees meeting. That's going to go into effect. So the deadline is either October 1st, you have to have proof of vaccination. That's for everybody going on campus, basically. If you're visiting, if you're a teacher, if you're staff, student. So you have to prove you're vaccinated before October 1st, or if one of the vaccines gets an FDA approval, whichever one comes first. And so that was a lot of controversy over that. There was, just like at school board, there's people speaking against the mandate, saying that it should not be mandated. But I think a lot of public health officials are all agreeing, and you've seen across the state and the country that to have people come back safely, the best thing to do is to get vaccinated. And City College was offering $100 cash to any students that would show up and prove that they had been vaccinated or getting vaccinated on campus. So $100 cash, and they did a couple days this week of that distribution, and it was packed. It was huge lines outside the sports pavilion.
Enrollment. I could get in on this.
Maybe you should take a J101 refresher, Jerry.
Oh,
yeah, you can sign up for J101 with Josh Molina. I'm sure it has a huge.
I'll be in there too.
And then I could get canceled too. Hey, but Ryan, on the City College thing, there were 3 members of the Board of Trustees who flipped, though, right? They had previously voted against the mandate. Is that because of the beef that's going on with the faculty, or what was that?
So yeah, like you said, the Academic Senate approved just days before that, a couple days before that, they approved a vote of no confidence against 5 of the board members, and their reasons would go beyond just the vaccine mandate. Rhiannon Napoleon said, and they have a list going back to 2012, I believe, of their list of grievances against these members, particularly. They didn't include Jonathan Abood or Anna Everett, the newest member, but the other 5 were all included in that. And so there was this pressure and it was central, the vaccine mandate was central to this vote of no confidence. So it's hard to tell if that's still going to go forward, because the Academic Senate voted to do that before this mandate was approved. And they are saying that it's not just the mandate. So at this time, it's still up in the air, and they're still going to do the vote of no confidence against these 5 members of the board of trustees, but the 3 of the members did, and they said Peter Haslund and Kate Parker, they all cited not just the vaccine mandates, but and Robert Miller also, he said that last time it came across, it was early June and there was not that many cases. I think there were 7 cases the day that they voted on it. And then the day before they voted this last time, there was over 100 and something cases, 134, I believe. So it was a lot more urgent that they passed it this time. And that's what they said their reasons were. But there was the whole vote of no confidence that definitely put that pressure on them.
All right, let's talk a little politics. Jade, you had a piece, Joe Holland, the county election czar, is getting ready for 2 elections, the November 3rd city election he's running, but also the September 14th. Is that going to be all vote by mail, or are there going to be, or are there going to be places people can vote on election day or before?
Yeah, there's going to be polling places on election day. They're not opening it up. I remember for the November elections in 2020, they did like a 4-day period where people could go to the polling places. It'll just be 1 day. I don't believe he gave me a specific number of polling places yet, but there's also going to be like 35-ish drop boxes across the county. Ballots are expected to go out on Monday, the 16th, and then voters have until the 14th of September to turn them in.
Yeah. And then, Josh, I guess we could say that Megan Harmon in the 6th District City Council race got kind of a boost this week when Ed St. George, the noted developer, went on your podcast and said what exactly?
So Ed St. George, he offered some advice on Megan Harmon and said that she should consider taking a 5 to 7 year break from politics to focus on her family. That's the gist of it. He said a lot of other things that were highly offensive and controversial and sexist. I think he, referred to her as a girl and said she was sort of the girl. Well, I don't even want to repeat some of it. People can watch it if they want to, but it was very sexist and it was controversial, and it caused a lot of reaction, shall we say. So, Jerry, I'm sorry, but you're not the most talked about show this week. You're just going to have to live with that.
Not this week, Josh. I'll just wait until next week. I got something else.
So he made his comments, and
the Women's Political Committee rounded up a bunch of people to sign a letter, falling to their fainting couches about what St. George felt. Did you feel at all it was a bit of an overreaction and kind of a performative umbrage on the behalf of the people that signed that letter?
I think you should probably ask the journalists in the room who weren't part of the story, Jerry, that question. They obviously have the right to react, and if Ed St. George said something that was offensive, then they want to respond publicly, then that's how it works. We're not allowed to shoot off the mouth without people reacting to us, especially in 2021.
Well, what about you, Josh? You got some pushback too.
Oh, now look at him. He's pushing here. Okay, go ahead.
That you provided a platform to this retrograde, patriarchal, heteronormative brand of sexism that was being spewed on your show. Did you get canceled as well?
I'm sure that there are people who are upset with me for allowing Ed to say these things on my show. Probably these were people who disliked me prior to the show. My podcast is meant to be conversations with people who are doing things in the community, who are influential, who are impactful. I have a wide variety of guests, and yeah, I give Ed a platform. I've given a lot of people a platform. I give a lot of people on the WPC a platform on my podcast who've been on there. And I think I don't know. I don't want to really live in a world where we're not going to give people an opportunity to say things. I think democracy played out. He said what he said and people reacted, and that's what happens. That was the accountability. And Megan Harmon, I don't know how upset she was.
I don't think she could have been too upset at all, because she's got all these people lining up to sign letters on her behalf. And, St. George, as I understand it, is, backing Nina Johnson in that race. So whatever it was he was trying to do completely backfired, that's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say about the platform thing is, I don't, we get Ryan and Jade's view on this, but, I think one of the challenges is we've got to figure out a way to be able to hear people say things that we disagree with. And these comments were highly offensive and sexist and controversial. We have to figure out a way to hear those and not just fully decide we're going to cast them out and never listen to them again. I think it's not really fair to do that. I think that nobody's perfect. And, Ed and Megan are friends, by the way. I mean, they talk and they text. So I think we have to figure out a way to disagree. And I think the WPC did what they did, and that's absolutely fine. And a lot of people signed the letter, and that's great. That's how these things work. Ed adopted his daughter in Brazil. She was on the streets. She was starving, and he spent all this time looking for the parents he couldn't find. And so he adopted her. Okay. That doesn't give him a pass to say horrible things about elected leaders and women who are aspirational in office. It absolutely does not. But at the same time, my role as a journalist, my training is to see people in their totality and not necessarily just to see them as and only the times that they screw up. Ed clearly should not have said those things about Megan Harmon. And I know Doss Williams gave him a call. I know Hannah Beth Jackson gave him a call. I know he talked to Megan Harmon. And I think that's what you should do. Pick up the phone and talk to him and tell him, hey, don't say that. And it's, we just kind of saw it play out here locally, and that's how it goes.
Jay, do you agree with Josh letting St. George off the hook here, or trying to have it both ways, as it were? I mean, where do you come down on this whole?
Before Jay talks, I want to know, Jerry, you've had Ed St. George on your show twice.
You've had your show. Let's hear from Jay.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like obviously Josh's, it wasn't his mission to get Ed St. George on this show just so he can say something offensive or stupid that'll get a lot of people talking. And obviously, like, there is, as a woman, I don't think there's space for comments like that, but it's not something that Josh controlled or made happen. And it does, paint a light about Ed St. George that I think people need to see. And what Josh said about his, like, seeing a person in totality, it's like, okay, you can see the good stuff he does about adopting his daughter, but he also has this side of him too that is offensive to women. And I think it's all just like, those comments weren't okay, but it is all just about the entire picture. It happened. This is what he said. And I think people should hear what he said as offensive.
Yeah, I also agree that this day and age on social media, you kind of let things play out, and people are exposing themselves, as it were, on social media. You'll see these people having freakouts in Walmart or whatever it is. And those people, when they say their views, the internet kind of reacts in the way that the internet does. And I think if you have kind of outdated views nowadays, and you want to come out and say them, then, like Josh says, there's going to be reactions to that. And that's kind of the day and age we're at now, that people are still saying these internalized either misogyny or racism, and they're letting things slip, and it's not okay anymore. And I think the world is showing that that's not really how we are in this day and age. You can't really come out and say those type of things in the same way. And there's different generations, and there's maybe he didn't mean it the way that it came out, but it did come out how it did, and the reaction did happen as it did.
But
And
isn't
I
it
think
really just kind of a form of authoritarian thought police, Jade?
I was just gonna say, I think it does, like, it starts a conversation too, you know? Would we have been talking about misogyny or how we can talk about women today if he hadn't said that, you know, on the show? Like, it wasn't good, but it gives room for people to talk about some issues that are happening. But also on that note, I have to hop off.
Okay.
Top secret mission calling. But yeah, it was nice to talk to you guys.
All right, thanks for
Yeah.
joining us, Jade.
Thank you.
Bye.
Jerry, what do you think? I mean, it sounds like you're trying to put words in all of our mouths here. What do you think here?
You know, I obviously, you know, it's not anything that you would say in a company today because, you know, it's just kind of dumb and sexist and, you know, people are hurt by it. But on the other hand, I just felt, you know, I mean, it's not like Ed St. George is some elected official. He's a developer and everybody knows, you know, who he is and what he's like and stuff. And it felt to me like, you know, kind of an overreaction of, you know, getting 150 people to sign a letter. And honestly, I was concerned at some of the comments that I read on some of the boards, you know, aimed at you. And I get concerned about people saying, oh, you know, this person has impure thoughts, you shouldn't give them a platform.
Huh.
And that's what I think concerns me the most. And
Well, I mean,
I'm glad to hear that you're having Ed back next week, Josh.
I mean, I think, you know, and I don't know how Ryan feels, but like, we're journalists. That's our job. You know, we are not here to only talk to people who we agree with. The First Amendment protects everybody's, you know, it protects speech even that we dislike, right? Like, we're not going to put people on the show who are saying horrible things. We do have a censor. Ed's a developer. He is somebody who's involved in local politics. And if he says things that we disagree with, well, you know, people are going to react. And that's how our democracy should work. But us as journalists, we don't want to be in a situation where we're like, these 62 people we never talk to because we don't agree with them, and we only talk to these people because these are the people we agree with. That's real dangerous, and that's what you see on cable news. You know, that's what you see with a lot of conservatives in terms of, you know, it's just like, we don't want to be like that. I don't think are we giving people a platform? We're journalists. We seek people's information and we ask them questions and they answer them.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of when you do interview, you're chasing a story, you interview people on each side and get each opinion. I think one major point though that I kind of want to highlight is that are we asking these same questions of Barrett Reed, who also just had a kid? And as long as that gets highlighted and people can kind of see that and notice, like, hey, are we giving these people equal criticism or equal praise, or are we picking and choosing depending on who we like or who we don't like?
Wow. All right. Yeah. And just to close, I have to mention this horrible case this week where this Santa Barbara man, Matthew Taylor Coleman, allegedly killed his two little kids, aged 3 and 10 months, because of serpent DNA. They were going to become monsters. He was down the whole QAnon hole. And I mean, this is a case that's gone global. It's really gone viral. And it's got a lot of different elements to it, but I can't remember just kind of a more awful thing that's happened connected to Santa Barbara in a long time. Have you done any reporting on it, Ryan, at all, or what?
So we it was kind of a team effort here, and I remember when it first was happening, we weren't sure if the Attorney General in Baja California or here in FBI in the United States were going to charge him. I did do some bilingual calls to the AG in Baja California. It was pretty hard to get information, but just like you said, like knowing that somebody can be so, I don't know if the word, maybe misled down a path where you're thinking that your own children are dangerous, or a 3-year-old and a 1-year-old are going to become monsters, and that's when we have content out there like that's that dangerous, that can kind of, I don't know if he had something going on in his own mind that he was susceptible to that, but he's not the first person in the country or the world to act out violently because they believe somebody's cursed, or they believe somebody is out to get them, or they believe this whole big conspiracy is going on. And this stuff is kind of dangerous, and you just got to be careful of when you're out and you're researching on the internet. And whenever you're looking at, just when I was doing my COVID fact and fiction this week, there's so much information, and you can't say it's misinformation or good information. There's just so much out there. You have to kind of trust your own research techniques and know not everything you see is reality, and you need to kind of trust yourself and just be careful when you come across stuff like this.
Yeah. The other thing, Josh, I think it's just a reflection of how tribal everything has become. It's just, particularly, I think, our politics. And it's all tied up where the culture and the politics are together, and there's just a lot of weak-minded people that are susceptible to stuff that's going on. You got any closing thoughts on this?
I mean, I don't have any closing thoughts. I have not reported on it, only what I've read, but it's sickening. Homicide and murder is wrong, but it's special kind of horror when it's your own children. And I have to believe that this guy, there was something more than his weird conspiracy political beliefs. I mean, that's just, you just don't do that. That's like one of the sake, you don't, obviously it happens, but it was horrific. It's just, that's what everyone's talking about. It was just so sad.
Yeah, it's sad when Santa Barbara is on a national level, but it's something about this or something like this.
Yeah. All right. We don't usually talk about crime stories, but this one is just so horrendous. I think we had to touch on it. So, Josh, thanks. And Ryan, thanks for taking the time. Jade Martinez Pogue, who left us early. And thank you all for watching. We will see you next week on another edition of Newsmakers, Journal of the Vaccine Year. Take care.